and they can kind of stagger about. And the reason we have babies is because our brains are so big that they have to carry on growing for well, 18 months or something after the newborn is out of the mother's body. And we know that Neanderthals had on average slightly bigger brains than ourselves, and so we can infer that they too had mothers nursing babies. So that's another duo of the mother nursing a baby that's also a new member of the community that you might think in a sort of nature red and toothed claw way is a bit vulnerable, with whom food is being shared. And there's a lovely hypothesis actually that links the two of those together called the grandmother hypothesis. That means, well, if you have this demanding baby who is not a toddler for 18 months, in order for the group to operate, those grandmothers, or I suppose grandmother rather than grandparent, but those elderly group are quite important. Well, babysitting functions, that sort of thing, or whatever. So there's an interesting thing that the community has changed in Neanderthals. Let's take a closer look at this site. Well, there you can see the site. And this is all this lime, this travertine stuff that buries the layers. A whole bunch of archaeologists digging away at that. And here's sort of how the lime works. It's sort of, you see a whole tree trunk that these Neanderthals dragged up into the cave. There weren't trees like that growing in the cave, and it gets sort of buried by the lime so quickly that you've got that cast there. You also have scattered across this site another element that's terribly important in our concept of how humans share food, and that is a hearth. And the other thing where we're really strange as a species is we have these things called cooking, which somehow or another every other species lives quite happily without doing. One idea about cooking is, okay, what is cooking? It's digestion outside the body. That's a rather functional way of looking at it. But one element of it is pre-digesting the food. And why would you need to pre-digest your food when other species don't? And that's because if you look at the size of our gut compared to other mammals, it's not that great a chemical factory. It doesn't digest things very well. It's quite small and so forth. And then if you try and explain why is the gut not as elaborate as other mammals, and one idea is it's something called an expensive tissue. In other words, you need a lot of fuel to run a gut, and in biological terms, you also need fuel to run other organs in the body, like your liver and your brain. And so there's one argument that says, for the brain to get bigger, the gut has to get smaller, and so you need external digestion to go with the smaller gut. And to do external digestion, you need a bigger brain. So it's a bit of a kind of circular argument. But one way or another, I just want to emphasize, although cooking is seen, that Levi-Strauss saw that as the thing that marked it out as being human. Occasionally, you get a dropped bead or something like that there. Behind it, you've got built space, the earliest architecture. In other words, you enclose the hearth, and some food bones, which is pretty clear. You can see some of the food bones in here. Behind you, or outside the hearth, you essentially have that half-centered circle. And as I said, from the position of all this, that you can see the meter scale there, one can argue they are doing this face-to-face stuff. And there's a number of other arguments to say that they're having that fluid, modern language style conversation, that mixture of information, but also the kind of social grooming conversation around that farm. And so with our own species, Homo sapiens, you see a number of the features. Now, this is how the school children of Domini Gesterency reconstructed it, and there you've got their hearth-centered circle with a happy family around. They've, as one tends to, made the clothing a bit primitive. We do know from contemporary graves that the clothing didn't need to be that primitive. You can see here a contemporary grave and reconstructed with a wonderfully elaborate headdress of shells and various fossil shell and bone stone ornaments. So I'm going to pull us, having taken you through 500,000 years to early Homo sapiens, I want to immerse us in a period which is much more recent, just about 2,000 years ago, to try and pick up that elements of that pattern and choreography and ask what it means. And I'm going to take you, as I say, to Roman Colchester, around about 2,000 years ago. And what we have here is the first military presence of Romans in Britain. It's quite basic barracks at this stage, and you've got to imagine a community which is half Italians and half Bulgarians, or Thracians as they were called then, that made up the troops. And this particular site has one of the treasures for the food archaeologist. It has a latrine, and this is quite a sociable thing. It's probably a three-seater in the back of this house, and it's full of this. It's full of fossil poo. Actually, I mean, we call it coprolite, but it's fossil poo, and fossil poo is a wonderful source of information for how people are sharing food. And as I say, it's a bunch of soldiers in timber-built, undecorated buildings coming to a chilly part of the empire. So it's quite interesting to see what they're eating. Are they on sort of rations and so forth? And at least some people, and by putting together, by looking at that fossil poo in detail, what one finds is they're eating this extraordinary, at least some people in that bleak fort are eating this extraordinary range of meats and fruits and seafood and imported wine. And the interesting thing is you can actually look at where these soldiers came from and ask what they're eating back home. And back home, they're not eating this stuff. It's all stuff in the process